Continuing our discussion with expert Dan Jacobs, former Justice Department trial attorney and expert on the BP oil spill. Dan, you highlighted three of the six failures outlined by the commission: inadequate design and testing the cement job that was used to seal the well, blissful disregard of the negative pressure test used to evaluate the flawed cement job, and the failure to detect signs of an impending blowout. In short, lots of human error. How did this happen with a company that large and that skilled?
Well, Art, as you say, these are three of the conclusions from the Commission's report. And I think if you take a good look at the report, which is very thorough, very well done in my opinion, I think you have to come to the conclusion that at a certain level, this event happened because of BP's priorities, their culture, and as the Commission says, an interest in saving time and essentially saving money. That's the bottom line.
All of those causes save the company money or time.
Well, certainly time in this context, and it's
is money.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's the proverbial time is money. Yeah.
So your view is that in real life, what happened is they were seeking to save money and or time, and that somehow pushed them to make these mistakes.
Well, I don't want to give you or your audience the impression that it's my opinion that it was just about money, because I think it's a bigger picture, Art. I really do. I think money, was certainly part of the motivation here, but I really do think it's a culture. This is an industry. The oil and gas exploration in the Gulf results in approximately $150 billion in revenue on an annual basis. So we can't just say, it's money. It's really more about a mindset and a culture of to be as neutral as possible, inattentiveness to safety issues.
Wow. Let's look at BP's history in other incidents besides this. Congressman Markey, the chair of the House subcommittee that investigated the disaster, has said that BP, and this is a quote, has a long and sordid history of cutting costs and pushing the limits in search of higher profits. Can you tell us a little bit about BP's environmental legacy?
Sure, Art. If you look at 2004, 5, and 6, there are a series of mishaps, to put it mildly, at BP facilities. 2004 to 5 at its Texas City refinery in Texas, a series of leaks, fires, explosions, whatnot, that resulted in one case in an explosion in 2005 where 15 people died. And pipeline leaks in Alaska, 2006. These are mishaps that BP has been fined tens of millions of dollars for by the federal government, both in terms of civil penalties and criminal penalties. So that might be what Congressman Markey is referring to.
And last September, there was the largest civil penalty ever in a Clean Air Act case.
Yes, that was the settlement of $25 million. These are record-setting penalties. And that particular one goes back to the 2006 pipeline event that I referred to. But these, again, record-setting civil Clean Air Act penalties and record-setting criminal Clean Air Act penalties for these events.
To the guy in the street like me, looking at this, you mentioned $150 billion coming in from the Gulf and more money from other areas. These companies, BP and others, are making a lot of money extracting the oil. It's just hard to imagine to save $1 million there or $1 million there when they're bringing in billions, that they would not go the extra mile for safety.
I think it's a fair point, Art, which is why, again, earlier I emphasized it's not just about the money when you're talking about those sums. They can afford it, and there's just more to it than that. It's more of a mindset, and it's more of a culture.
Well, maybe this tragic incident will be a wake-up call to the company and perhaps the industry. And in the next segment, we're going to ask Dan about where were the government regulators? Were they asleep at the switch? We'll be back with more of our show after these messages. Continuing our conversation with expert Dan Jacobs. Dan, do you think the BP's history of violations will play a role in what the Justice Department does vis-a-vis BP going forward into the future?
Absolutely, Art. As I've intimated in the past, BP has really not complied with the law as it should have. And the Justice Department certainly will look at its history in that respect going forward, both on the civil side and the criminal side. And I need to make clear for your audience that the Justice Department is proceeding both on the civil side and on the criminal side. The Attorney General actually has announced in public that there's a criminal investigation of the BP disaster in the Gulf. And I think we can expect indictments to come down at some point in time. It's only a question really of whether the indictments will be against one or more companies and or one or more individuals or both.
And just for the record, the Justice Department in December did file a civil suit against BP, which sued Halliburton, which did the cement work, Transocean, which operated the rig, and Cameron, the manufacturer of the blowout preventer. So there is a debate among those involved as to, it's kind of a finger-pointing thing.
Absolutely.
At a very high level.
Absolutely, and it's sort of classic. What you saw in December was the Justice Department suing BP, and
BP sues the others.
Yeah, what happens next is this year you have BP suing Halliburton that, as you say, did the cement job in Transocean that operated the rig, and Cameron, the blowout preventer manufacturer. So it's classic finger pointing.
Well, at the end of the day, should we, the public, have confidence that this tragedy really is not going to happen again?
Well, you know, what history has taught us, if you look back to the late 1980s and the Exxon Valdez oil disaster up off the coast of Alaska, is that these sort of worst case scenarios are cyclical. So one would have hoped after Exxon Valdez that we would not have had BP in the Gulf last year, but we did. So I certainly don't have the confidence level yet that industry, or again, to be fair, government has made the changes that need to be made to make sure this type of thing doesn't happen again.
You mentioned government. Let me, because I've been teaching this for 20 years and I learned it at law school, that our government regulatory agencies often become captive of the industries they're supposed to be regulating. And no better example of that can be found than the former Mineral Management Service, part of the Department of Interior, that was supposed to be regulating these entities and providing for safety protocols and all. And clearly they were asleep at the switch. And in fact, the agency has been renamed and brought into another configuration.
That's true. There seem to have been, at least figuratively, people asleep at the switch, both in the Gulf, on the shore, and in Washington.
But as you suggested earlier, when you're dealing at 3 miles down, and where accidents, should they occur, however rarely, could be catastrophic, you would think that there would be a safety protocol in place in the event that this unlikely event happened. And yet, clearly, the safety protocols were inadequate.
Yeah, another metaphor I like to use is if you go to a hospital, if you go to an ICU unit, you've got all these measurement devices, all these alarms that are set to go off if something goes wrong. And in fact, alarms did go off There was data streaming in that showed something was going very wrong just before the explosion. One of the things we have not learned yet is exactly, you talk about people being asleep at the switch, where were the people, and you use the term figuratively, but where at 9 o'clock at night on this oil rig or back in Houston if the data was being monitored back there as well. And again, I don't know, but I'd like to see the investigation proceed in the direction, and I suspect it will, that the Justice Department conducts. Tell us, answer some of those questions. Why were these indications not picked up on that, like you would in a hospital room? Why didn't we see what was going on and do something?
Well said, well said. We'll be back with the remaining portion of our show after these messages.
Welcome to McKenna's on the Bay, where fine dining is complemented with a breathtaking view. McKenna's is a restaurant of incredible ambiance, providing service and cuisine with style, class, and romance. The menu offers a variety of appetizers, serious seafood, prime steaks, an oyster bar, and specialty entrees for either lunch or dinner. McKenna's on the Bay features patio dining, nightly entertainment, and 2 banquet facilities. No matter what your occasion, McKenna's on the Bay is like being on vacation. Join us today at McKenna's on the Bay.
Founded in 1976, Polly's Gourmet Coffee is Southern California's most complete gourmet coffee store. Polly's has the best tasting coffee, freshly roasted every day right in the store, plus a wide selection of teas, an in-house bakery, espresso bar, patio dining, and more. We also offer Wi-Fi, free internet access for all of our customers. Our nationwide clientele agree, when it comes to coffee, there's only one name to remember: Polly's. 4606 East 2nd Street, welcoming you into Belmont Shore.
We've come down pretty hard on BP in this show, and this incident clearly was not their finest hour. And no one particular incident encapsulates an entire history of a company or its activities. I know, as I mentioned at the outset, that BP is a very positive force in our community and has done a lot of good things. I'm told they were the first company to cold iron a tanker so that emissions are reduced and electricity is used to discharge the boat in the ports of Long Beach. So this is just one element of a very broad picture, and for the record, we have invited BP to come on the show at a later time. But Dan, we want to thank you for your expertise in this very sad episode, and give you a chance to give whatever concluding comments you'd like.
Well, thanks, Art. First of all, thank you for inviting me. It's been a real pleasure to be here in Long Beach with you. And just to pick up on one last point, I want to say that the extraction industries do face a particular challenge in terms of sustainability. But I think one of the major lessons learned here is that they can and should do better.
And you're at the Kogod College School of Business at American University, and you're the director of the master's program in sustainability.
Yes, the MS in Sustainability Management.
And that's the watchword going future. Everyone's interested in green and sustainability.
That's right.
And that should include our oceans and keeping the water clean.
Absolutely. Oceans are one of the hottest topics these days in sustainability management.
Well, thank you for being here in Long Beach all the way from Washington, D.C., and we appreciate you coming on the show.
Thank you.
And thank you at home for joining us. Please be with us next week for the next edition of Straight Talk. Good night, everyone.
Straight Talk has been brought to you by Southern California Edison, the Press Telegram, and remember, Straight Talk is viewable worldwide 24/7 at straighttalktv.com.